Hello, Lloyd Moyer here. I've just made this little lidded box out of maple. Has a suction fit lid. Fits together just right. Has a little pop when you open it. And that's what you're going to see me make in this video. So today I thought I would take a shot at making a lidded box. Lidded boxes are not something that I am a big pro at. But it's something I'm practicing on and getting better at, so I'm going to try it. I have this piece of pretty old swamp maple. It's a little bit spalted, it's a little bit soft, doesn't cut like a dream, but it's solid at least. So we're going to give this a try. We're going to see how we do. Oh, trying to open it, and I should be closing it. So the first thing I'm going to start with, as you can see, I prepped it by turning a little spigot on there so that I can fit it in my chuck. I am going to bring the tail center up. It doesn't hurt and it won't be in the way. So the first thing I'm going to do is just true it up and make it round. And I will do that with my skew chisel, and I'm going to use what's called a peeling cut. And a peeling cut is not scraping like this, and it's not super high up like this. It's just sort of a little bit up from center. So the back of the tool is down, and what you're doing is you're just like it describes, you're just peeling the material off of the piece. Speed. Spindle work, you can usually work a little faster. Usually, I say. So you see I'm just easing it in, and you just go straight in, a little bit at a time. A lot of people, or a lot of times, beginners especially, and even people that are more experienced turners, the thing that they have the hardest time with, or the most trepidation about getting into, is using the skew chisel. And I certainly am one of those. It took me a long time to get more or less comfortable using a skew chisel. But what I can tell you is like with so many things, the more you use it, the more comfortable you get with it. So use it. You'll mess up with it. Don't worry about it. That's how you learn. Just take your time, be careful, and always be cutting with the bottom half of the tool. Don't be embarrassed to turn it over and use the bottom half, the long pointing end. Sometimes you get a little more control that way. Nothing wrong with that. I'm just going to clean up the bottom face here. And already I'm going to take away the tail center so I can get in there. All right, well, I'm all round. Let me just clean this up a little bit. So this will be my base. This will be my lid. And it's usually, you usually want to have your lidded boxes, or usually I want to have my lidded boxes not quite half and half, but pretty close to half lid and half base. So I think my join is going to be about right there. So then we'll start by turning the inside of the lid. I think you can see from this shot just how how nicely that cut, how nicely that wood doesn't cut. Maple is often gorgeous to cut. This tree is swamp maple, and it's very dry, and it gets very soft very quickly. But it also makes it a little less complicated, I find. So we're going to see how we do. So I'm going to start with back hollowing here, right? And I've mentioned it before, but back hollowing is basically you're going to go in to the middle, and then you're going to, from the center here, you're going to drop the tool handle, and the tool comes up. And you're actually cutting with this part of the tool, which is not where you normally cut. You can only do this with end grain work. You can't do this with base grain. But it's a very efficient, very fast way to hollow something out, to hollow out into anything. See how deep and how quickly I've gotten into that? And already I'm about as, oh, yeah, I can go a little bit deeper, but I want to leave some room for a finial, or if I want to do something on the top of the lid. Now what I'm going to try and do with this is to make it a suction fit lid, and the longer the flange on the box, the easier it is to get a good suction fit. When you're scraping along the side like this, you have to be sure that the tool is up high enough that it's only this top corner that's coming into contact with the wood, because if the bottom corner comes into the contact with the wood, as you go in, the bottom corner will push the tool to the side. Whereas if you're on the top corner, you just go straight in. The other thing that is very important when turning the flange here is that you get it as straight in and out as possible, so that you want this to be a cylinder, not sloping in or sloping out, as close to being an actual cylinder as you can get. And so to achieve that, I actually use my expandable calipers here, and being careful with this pays off. It makes the join of the box much better. Sorry, I'm covering up. But basically what you do is you expand these interior calipers into the bottom corner of your flange, and then just pull out, and you can feel, where it's tight and where it's not. Now what I am is, it's just slightly tighter in the back corner than it is at the front. So since this will be the lid, the lid will be is slightly that way. So what I need to do is take just a little bit out of that bottom corner. I need to take nothing out from the top, nothing out from the rim side, but just a tiny little bit out from the corner. And again, I'm sure this seems tedious, especially the checking and over-checking it, but it really does pay off. That feels just right. Of course, if I do it badly, it's still not going to pay off. But it is much easier to get a good fit of base and lid if that is a cylinder. If this piece here is truly a cylinder. I'm gonna get my round nose screwdriver here. Oh, what a lovely cut. I'm gonna just sharpen this scraper. Now, of course, the way to take care of such terrible tear out in that end grain usually is with a scraper that's good and sharp, and to take a very light cut. As I said, this particular wood, this particular tree is not cut very nicely, and it's very prone to this kind of tear out. So I was expecting it. And of course it helps if the tree is good and sharp. Of course, I'm sure we'll do some of it with sandpaper also, but oh man, that's really rough. That's okay. I'm gonna raise up a little bit here so that I know I just lowered it, but raise it up to come up a little bit higher and get a little bit closer. Not all of it, but that made it better. That made it much better. I also have a fair amount of room in that shoulder. That shoulder doesn't need to be quite that big. I've also had people tell me, and I've never really tried this before, that if you oil that a little bit, it can sometimes help with the grain. So let's try that. This is just some of my walnut oil. I mean, of course you can do it with something like a sanding sealer or something like that too, but I don't have any sanding sealer. I don't use any sanding sealer. And you know, you could use CA glue or something like that to make the grain harder, which I guess is the idea with the oil here. Let's see if this works. Honestly, I don't really anticipate it to, but we're gonna try. I'm up to trying new things, you know? Sorry if I'm gonna be in your way a second here. I'm not going to say that helped, but it didn't hurt. So I'm just going to leave the inside like that, and we'll sand it and be done with it. But I actually left the point in the middle of the lid here, which is really just for fun. You know, the lid doesn't have to be an inverted mold. Yeah, see that? That took care of it. We're going to go to 180. Trying to sand this flange here as little as possible, and I want it to maintain the shape that I made for it. You're cutting, right? You're cutting, when you're sanding, you're cutting. You're just using a very different, a very different kind of cutting tool. And so I want to cut as little as possible because I got that flange just the way I wanted it. So I want to change it as little as possible. A suction fit lid box like I'm trying to make here is really fun challenge for me. I don't know how much it gets appreciated in the marketplace because they don't see all of that. The person who's picking it up at your booth doesn't necessarily see all the time and the measuring and the things like that go into it, so I don't know that you get your value out of it, but it's made me a better trimmer. Making them has made me better at this. So I'm a fan of it. I think everybody should try one. Don't necessarily have to enjoy it. So usually at where the base and the lid meet, you want to have some sort of a bead or something, something to bring interest to the piece, because you can't hide that it's two different pieces. So I just put this little angle in here so that when I decide what I want, I can do it. And then while I'm here, I'm also going to shape some of the outside. Since I can actually look and see what I'm doing. Finishing. I'm just sort of roughing out the shape. Taking some of the weight off it. I forgot. So we put some finish on it. Just on the inside. Walnut oil and beeswax. I've always used old socks, old t-shirts, rather than paper towels to do this. It's less peaceful, and I feel like the cloth holds the wax and the finish much nicer. So you also get a love that. Whereas, paper towel is just paper. All right. Next, the parting tool a little more. Next, we will put the base in. Actually, yeah, we'll do the base next. If that was going to fit into my, oh, maybe it will. If I can fit this in here, maybe I will take a little bit more of this shoulder off of here. No, okay. So next I want to just figure out what the basic diameter of my spigot needs to be. I don't have to get it fitted yet. I just want to know about. So the best way to do that is to take your peeling cut, take it down a bit, and then angle it. So what you have is a pretty good angle there. So that was too big. So you go down to the smallest part and then angle it again. Still too small. The lid is still too small. So you take it down to the smallest part and angle it again. There you go. So, again, as I've said before, I'm not great at this. Usually when I have where you first find the fit is right at the edge, but not the case for me. That's okay though. What I'm going to do is actually going to make this a little longer. Has to be longer anyway. And if you can see where the dark line is, that's where it fits. I'm actually going to take this down a bit. So this line is all I need to know. It tells me how wide this spigot needs to be so that the lid will fit on it. I also need to mark, if I had a pencil, I need to mark on the outside of the lid how deep the lid is. So we go something about like that. So we're right about there. All right, now we can go ahead and hollow the inside. So I just hold the depth gauge about where I want to be, hold it against the rim there, and then in I go. That didn't work. Oh, that's why. You actually need to have a little divot on the inside for the depth gauge to locate into, rather than a little point. So it'll be about right there. And then the rest of this I'm going to do with the scraper. And that banging you heard was the tool bouncing up and down because I wasn't holding it down. Dusty. I'm going to put on the vacuum cleaner here. Dust extraction. Sorry. To use the proper name. And what I think I'm going to do here is have a flat bottom. Like it's not me not holding the tool well enough, it is the wood actually sticking out. It's a little bit low here also. You're actually probably getting a better view of this than I am. I'm looking down in here, and that's how I can see what's going on. I'm not doing a whole lot of commentary at this point. I'm trying not to mess up. Because as I have said before, I'm very much an advocate of being okay with messing up, but I still try not to succeed. Feels like it's fine. Now what I want to do next is I'm actually going to, you go down to the end of the flange, and I'm going to try and go out, make it a little bit wider, so the bottom is slightly wider than the top here. Let's sand the inside. I felt a little hump on the inside wall, but it's where I sort of down to the bottom of the flange and then out where I made that turn. Don't ever want to wrap the paper or cloth or anything like that around your finger. It'll get tangled up and caught in something and pulled around, and you want it to pull out of your hand, not pull your hand into the spinning machine. An old piece of 180 does not cut the same as a new piece of 220. Just throw it away. And I always round over the inside lip of the box so that when you reach into it and you're pulling out, it's not uncomfortable. You don't want a sharp edge to it. Friendly neighborhood wood turning supply store was out of 220 grit, 240 grit sanding paper, so I had to get some sandpaper from the hardware store, which is why the 220 doesn't match everything else. People ask me all the time what these are supposed to be used for, what they're supposed to hold. And my wise ass but honest answer is I can't tell you that. I don't even somebody's gonna decide for themselves. But I always thought it would me a good, I have a little end grain hair out that I'm going to try and get out of here. I always think they're good little containers for things like, for a younger person, little treasures. For hair ties. I have daughters, hair ties or things like that, but also little even paper clips and push pins, like that. But also things like spices. Still a little bit. The oil will cover that up now. Might hit the oil. I'll use this. Next step is going to be to fit the lid tightly. Fit tight so that I can fit it together and actually turn off the rest of the top there, and then we'll come back and readjust. To make it a smoother fit. I'm going to use my smaller skew chisel. I'm going to do a peeling cut here. Very easy to overdo this. It's also very tempting to sort of bang, force it on there. A great way to break the lid. If we're going to break the lid, that's the way to do it. Like that. All right. So we have the good fit there. That's going to be fine. So the next thing to do is to set the thickness of the lid and the wall here. So what I'm going to do is you reduce the thickness of this. So this distance here is going to let you know what the thickness of your lid should be. All right, I also want to check. Also need to check the just do it with pencil. I need to check the flange length. Did it with the wrong hand. All right, So my flange needs to be about to there. So what I mean by that is, if I have this wall down to that thickness there, then I know that if my lid is on here, and now it's on, I have to just work with a stick, or is it just, hold on, just digression. So if my lid is on here, and the lid thickness is the same as this thickness, then I know that the lid is that thick. So that's what we're doing with that. I'm also going to put this onto a jam chuck. I'll turn this around and fit this onto a jam chuck so that I can finish the bottom part of this. Okay, so that's about right there. Now we're going to finish up the lid. You can do this with the skew chisel, but since we're just hanging on by friction here, I'm going to do it with the gouge. Forgot I need to mark where the inside is. Okay. Thinking maybe this would look a little bit like a mushroom or something. First I just want to get it rounded out. Now I want to remark where the inside is here. My inside depth is right about there. Now I'm going to reduce this till it's something about like the thickness that our base is. Right about there. So you see, you're looking from above, so you can see pretty well. Hopefully, the line here passes through this bead and is about the same as what's there. That's what I'm trying to do. It's pretty close. And then you can just make this into a bead. Making beads is great practice for the skew chisel. It's the most basic operation that you do with it. All right. Not gonna mess with this a whole lot. I don't feel like it needs a whole lot. There are inspirations for shapes all over the place. Like I said, I was thinking this was sort of mushroom shaped. But, domes and, spires. And I love, see a good curve. Take note of it, file it away in your head. Because it's where you pull your inspiration. What you see around you in the world. The world is full of great shapes. Yes, I realize this doesn't really look like a mushroom. .120 grit. Just make sure there isn't anything terrible. Some tear out here that I'm gonna have to clean up. It's also good to remember when you're cutting, as you come to the center, both on the inside, like this, and I'm doing on the outside, the wood is moving slower here than it is here. So you have to really slow your cut down to get a good cut when it's wood like this that's a little punky, a little tough. You have to slow your cut down because the wood is moving slower. Having with this particular piece is that because it's a little old and starting to rot in a few places, and you're getting some spalting, the harder stuff, the harder parts of the wood will sand slower than the softer parts. So as I'm sanding, I'm making it a little less round. It's another reason to really have to be gentle on the joint, because you'll change the shape. Got to melt the wax into the wood, which is why you let it turn, heat up. A little thin on the top, but that's okay. If I hold the light up to this, you can actually see through it. Let me get a flashlight. This light might not be strong enough. It's not. Oh well. Can't see, it's not that thin, but it's still pretty thin. So now, we have to fine fit. Sorry about that, that's the tool rest there. Now we have to fine fit the lid. What I'm gonna do is, what you really want, you know, this should be cylindrically shaped like the inside of the lid, but if you make it just slightly domed, right, so that it's a little lower here and a little lower here, you get it goes on easily, and when it's all the way on, it spins. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to do it with the skew chisel here, just ever so gently. A little bit off there, a little bit off here, and then we'll take sorry, that was 180. 220, and you can, like I said, it's really easy to overdo this. And I may have done it, because, like I said, I'm not an old pro at this. Nope, still a little bit tight. And you can see where it's still catching there, which I want it to catch. That's okay, but it's just a little bit tight. And I want it just a little bit looser down here at the end. Again, this is a process that, especially as you're watching it, maybe you feel like it's taken a long time. But when you take your time, this pays off. That's good at the bottom. It's just, you can see where the burnish mark is. That's just a little, Remember how, maybe you remember, I used to love to watch Bob Ross when I was a little kid, Joy of Painting on PBS. And when he talked about doing something really lightly with a paintbrush, he'd talk about 3 hairs and some air. When he wanted to make a really light touch. And that's when I make a cut like that, that's what I think about, is 3 hairs and some air. That is just right. That'll tighten up just a tiny little bit overnight because the wood is hot, so it'll expand as it cools. I don't like the lid to be so tight that you have to pick both pieces up to take it off. I want you to be able to reach down, and the box is on the table and you can lift it off, but you can still feel the suction. So that is just right. Okay, now we have to turn this around and make a jam chuck for this to fit over. So as you see, I found a piece of cherry that I had lying around, and this may not work because this is very, very close to the diameter that I needed. So it might be Might be too close. But let's see. This is great practice for fitting the lid, right? Not quite, just a little bit more. No, still not yet. You want it to fit tight, but you want it to go on. You know, you don't want to have to force it. Okay. Now, I marked the inside of this is right about at the where I had the jaws here. Still visible. Turn this just a little bit. Now I have to take the teeth marks out of here, the jaw marks out of here. And I have to finish the bottom. I think the bottom is going to be about there. That should be okay. Still have a little more to go there. The other thing that I can do here is do some sort of a little decoration there, because I don't want to go too thin. That'll be fine. And I think I will do just a little. Just something a little bit decorative right on the bottom here. Just have to be careful because you know that the wall of the piece is right there. Hate to get to this point and go through the bottom of it. Of course, you never go through the bottom of it when you're not on your last cut, right? I forget, was it the gouge that was giving me a terrible cut? It was. Gouge is giving me a terrible cut, so we're going to cut with the scraper. Does sound awfully thin, doesn't it?
Sounds thinner than it should sound. It's not. It's fine. Just sounds thin. I guess if I go through the bottom now, I have to leave it in the video. That's why, because there's a ton of tear out right there. Well, may not be able to do anything about that. That's just gonna, that'll be fine. A little bit of wormhole action going there. Let's see. Oh yeah. Looks like a guy with a hat. That's just right. This is prime time for me to screw this up. If you know me, you know that'd be right up my alley. Just something I would do. Very dusty, very dusty. Turning on the extraction. Just checking it here, making sure there isn't anything glaring. And there's not. Now go to 180. Again, I can feel how the wood is sanding, the different densities of wood are sanding differently. You won't be able to tell when you hold it, but you can tell when you're sanding. And so again, like it's kind of important to not push down too hard when you're sanding. fun thing to make. I really enjoy making boxes. They're really rewarding. They can be frustrating also, because it's very easy to mess them up, very easy to get it wrong. But when you get them right, and it takes practice to get the design right also. I'm still not a pro at that by any means. As you can see, this design certainly isn't perfect, but I'm happy with it. Ideally this would be wider, and it would curve in, or it would tilt in a bit, actually. But I don't want to change. So I could make this so it tilts in a bit. See how there the grain lines up. But then I would have to change the thickness here too to make the line between this line and this line. I'd have to change them both. So I don't want to mess with it. I'm going to do some of the beeswax here. Unbelievably, I got through this whole project, and there it is. And if you listen, hold on. It's just that soft suction, so maybe you can hear the suction of it just right. Try these. They're really fun.